There is clearly a deep state. An FBI informant connected to the uranium deal made written allegations to Congress that the Russians paid $3 million to influence Hillary and the deal. And those text messages between two FBI lovers suggest President Obama wanted to be in the know in the Russia investigation. Newt Gingrich is with us. He's the author of that book, Understanding Trump. Newt, welcome to the program. I want to deal with these one at a time. The Uranium One deal, the informant, Douglas Campbell. Take me through it. What's the implications here?
Well, I think the implications are very real. Remember, this is also a deal where there was millions of dollars going to the Clinton Foundation. Bill Clinton was going to Moscow to give a speech for $500,000. The whole thing really, I think, from the very beginning looked terrible and probably was terrible. And all of this is unraveling. I mean, the things you're describing, look, I remember my first campaign was during Watergate. And every day I'd get up and something new would unravel. And you could never figure out what was going to happen next. So if we had sat around a year ago and said, it's going to turn out that Comey was developing a briefing for President Obama because he wanted to, quote, know everything, we would have thought that was inconceivable. And I went back and I got Howard Baker's quote from 1973. What did the president know and when did he know it?
Yeah.
Because this whole thing is just going to keep opening up into more and more pieces.
It is Watergate style, isn't it? I mean, I hate to make a comparison. Is it bigger than Watergate? But clearly, these are developments in a
it's
major
different than
scandal.
Watergate. Look, Watergate was a handful of people who did some really dumb things centered around President Nixon. And in the end, they all left office. A number of them went to jail. This starts with senior people in the FBI, senior people in the Justice Department, apparently some people in the State Department, based on one story yesterday. I mean, this is the deep state. This is not a handful of people in politics in the White House. This is the deep state. But what we're now beginning to be told is that maybe President Obama knew about it, supported it, sent signals it was okay, and maybe it puts back into a new question what Attorney General Lynch was saying on the airplane to former President Bill Clinton when they met the week that his wife was going to be interviewed, which now looks more and more phony, since apparently Comey began writing the explanation of why they weren't going to prosecute her 2 months before he interviewed her. All of this just looks like the fix was in and the bureaucracy had frankly been corrupted.
I think you used the right word, Newt, and that is unraveling before our very eyes. I do want to talk to you about this budget deal that's gone through the Senate. It would really vastly increase government spending, virtually no government spending cuts, and it's going to lead us towards trillion-dollar deficits again in a couple of years. Seems like the Republican Party has abandoned austerity. What do you say?
Well, first of all, I hope we've abandoned austerity. I was a Reagan-Kemp Republican. Our model in the 1980s was massive economic growth, not austerity. In the 1990s, I helped pass the largest capital gains tax cut in history. We had a huge boom, as you'll remember, in the late 90s. And we combined that, though, with real reform. I mean, it was the combination of reforming welfare, reforming Medicare, opening up the communication system, reforming the Food and Drug Administration, plus the huge tax cut, which led to a dramatic increase in revenue and a stabilization, not a big decline, but a stabilization in spending. What Republicans have to do, if they want to get back to a balanced budget, first of all, the number one goal has to be economic growth. You put enough people to work, you put enough companies making a profit, you put enough people having their incomes go up through greater productivity, you're going to get a big stream of extra revenue. Second, we need large reforms. We need, for example, to have workforce improvement, which will save tens of billions.
You've got to have Social Security reform. You've got to have Medicare reform. They're draining the Treasury as we speak. But that is the third rail of American politics. And I don't know
I want to...
No? Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just disagree with you. If I were the Republican Party, I would say we're not going to touch Social Security, which is an earned entitlement. We're not going to touch veterans, which is an earned entitlement, and we're not going to touch Medicare, which people paid into their whole life. That still means you can reform disabilities, you can reform Medicaid, you can certainly go after fraud in Medicare, which I think may yield $100 billion a year. I mean, there's smart things you could do, and as you pointed out earlier, I did help balance the budget for 4 straight years. I think we could have a smart approach over the next 2 years to getting to a balanced budget. Just take a look at what happened with the launch of the Falcon Heavy, which was a remarkable rocket launch and recovery by a private sector entrepreneur who did it for about 1/20th of what people thought it would cost the government to do it. There are lots of ways we can take cost out of the system.
Okay.
And I think that ought to be our approach.
Oh, I think we should talk more about that. Newt Gingrich, come back and see us sometime, because that's a very important point. We appreciate it, Newt. Thanks a lot, sir. Good stuff.